Have you heard of artists who make the audience mix the colors themselves? Not only that, but they also gives them only pure colors. This sounds like a complicated task, but it only happens at a glance. According to these artists, Seurat and Signac, these would be blended by the viewer's eye to create a more striking image than any made after mixing colors conventionally on a palette. They wanted to find new methods to paint more and more vivid art, to refine the impulsive and intuitive artistic mannerisms of Impressionism. So they started new art movement, and among other fascinating things, invented a new art technique, called Pointillism. Georges Seurat, known as a founder of the movement Neo-Impressionism, was a French artist, with sensitivity for the beauty of the modern urban life. He was drawn to the ways of depiction of light and the perception of the world around us, like most of the Impressionists. He was also influenced from the conceptual approach to nature. What set him apart from the rest of the painters, was his relentless passion for logical abstraction and his sharp and precise mind. His large-scale painting, Sunday Afternoon on La Grande Jatte, painted from 1884 to 1886, is fundamental to Neo-Impressionism and one of the most recognizable works of art of this period. The painting is approximately 2 by 3 meters and includes figures of people in a park on the banks of the River Seine. The picture draws the viewer's attention to the landscape of the park. His work of art has been reworked several times until the final version. The artist makes drawings and oil sketches throughout the process, exploring the positions of park visitors and concentrating on the color, light and shape of the objects and their surroundings. But first let's see what ignited the spark of Pointillism. This French chemist, Michel-Eugène Chevreul, was very important to Pointillism, because of his book, Principles of Harmony and Contrast of Colors. The story says, that he was hired from tapestry works in Paris to find a way to improve the quality of its colors. But he found out, that not the dyes was the problem, but the way the hues was made and combined. It was not only matter how bright and colorful was the colors on its own, but how they looked next to each other. The complementary colors enhanced each other's intensity. Like green, that's mixed from blue and yellow, next to red, or violet, from red and blue, next to yellow, and orange, from yellow and red, next to blue. The Neo-Impressionist painter Georges Seurat had employed those theories in figurative and landscape compositions during the 1880s. His paintings was created without using traditional methods of mixing pigments on a palette. Rather, his method was based on short brush strokes and colored dots in pure and contrasting colors that affect perception as a whole spot. The technique relies on the ability of the eye and mind of the viewer to blend the color spots into a fuller range of tones. The colors seem brighter than typical mixed subtractive colors, because mixing of the pigments is avoided. Also, some of the white background of the canvas can be seen between the strokes. A similar principle of color formation can be observed today in some color printers and monitors. By the way, Chevreul's book inspired some other remarkable artists, whose experiments led to the creation of the Orphism art movement. So that's how science can enthuse artists. In summer of 1884, Seurat began work on Sunday Afternoon on La Grande Jatte. From our perspective, this picture can be associated with serenity, but during its first exhibition it provoked both exaltation and mixed reactions. The painting shows members of each of the social classes participating in various park activities. At first glance it's not dramatic, but the essential meaning of a Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte is far from clear. However, art critics believe that it should be interpreted in comparison to its sister work, Bathers at Asnières, painted before it. They believe that La Jatte represents the French bourgeoisie, a decaying class that has fallen victim to lust and vice, and which is now in the shadows. In contrast, the sun is shining on the working-class bathers of Asnières, who represent the bright future of France. Seurat believed that a painter could create harmony and emotion like the way musician uses counterpoint and variation in music. His scientific approach of color based on knowledge of perception and optical laws created new language of art, called chromo-luminarism. He wrote, "Art is harmony. Harmony is the analogy of the contrary and of similar elements of tone, of color and of line. In tone, lighter against darker. In color, the complementary, red-green, orange-blue, yellow-violet." Seurat used luminous hues to achieve emotions, motion with lines directed upward. Calm perception balance of light in the dark, warm and cold colors, and by lines that are horizontal. Sadness is achieved by using dark and cold colors and by lines pointing downward. In 1884, Paul Signac met Claude Monet and Georges Seurat and was fascinated by their methods. He followed their passion for color theory and began one of the supporters of Neo-Impressionism and Divisionism, which is basically a more complex method from the Pointillism, that use mainly dots of paint and does not necessarily focus on the separation of colors. Many of Signac's paintings include views of the French coast because he was a sailor and loved to paint water. He painted with oil like Seurat, because the oil gives more texture, can be layered and allows density. But in his watercolors he used much freer manner. Signac's best-known paintings are the Port of Saint-Tropez, Grand Canal, In the Time of Harmony 1893, and Place des Lyces, 1893. Musical metaphors were occasionally used to help describe Pointillism. Signac, who took over as the movement's leader after Seurat's death in 1891, likened the process of choosing his colors according to the symphony orchestra order. Circus Sideshow, from 1888, is one of just 6 large paintings Georges Seurat completed before his death in 1891, at the age of 31. It is the only one of his major canvases that shows a nocturnal scene. It represents the parade, or sideshow, of the Circus Corvée at the annual Gingerbread Fair. Viewed from a distance, the painting gives the impression of a constellation of tiny painted dots. On closer inspection, it becomes apparent that it was constructed with brushstrokes whose size, shape, and function vary considerably. Seurat initially applied large, widely spaced dots and dashes of paint in what would be the dominant color of a given area and then continued with a progression of dots and dashes of diminishing size. With its strident color combinations, Pointillism was a clear influence on Fauvism, among other movements. Henri Matisse's Lux, Calme et Volupté from 1904 is often cited as an important work of transition between the two. If you enjoyed this video, you can like it, subscribe to the channel or share it. This will be a sign for us that we are doing something valuable.